Hello everybody, happy Friday afternoon, hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but first we just hit 2,320 subscribers to the YouTube channel. Want to give a shout out to all the subscribers, and as always, special tip of the cap goes to the channel members, especially elite channel members, HaWKxXAsYLuM, Brandon Mikel, Rip, Scott Todd, Hasher for MVP, VGK Tigers, John Harper, and Salacious Crumb. Alright, I wasn't planning on making this many Seahawks videos right after the season ended, but circumstances kind of demanded, and this is a great time to be making a lot of content, and I wouldn't be much of a Seahawks channel if I wasn't pumping out content at this time, right? So, we need a new offensive coordinator. We've talked about the Schottenheimer part of it as much as needs to be talked about, in my opinion. There may be some residual resentment between Wilson and Carroll, and I may make a video about that at some point, but that's not what this video is. This video is going to be starting an extended series of videos that I plan to make for as long as the Seahawks do not have an offensive coordinator on their staff. So here's what we're going to do, and this will be occupying my channel for the foreseeable future, I think. So we're going to be making quite a few videos. We are going to be taking a look at offensive coordinator candidates for the Seahawks, and we're going to be taking a look at one candidate each day and going over their resume with a fine-tooth comb to see what we can learn. And I'm going to kind of divide this series up into three sections. The first section, which I will be starting in this video, is the most likely candidates. We're going to be taking a look at 5 coordinator candidates that I expect to get the job and are most likely to be the next Seahawks offensive coordinator. After that, we're going to jump into the slightly more unlikely ones who still have a realistic chance to be the next offensive coordinator, and then we're going to do the Hail Marys. So basically, by the end of this series, if we haven't already hired a coordinator, we should have a pretty good idea of the pool of candidates the Seahawks are pulling from. So we're going to be taking a look at each candidate's resume, and then we're going to rank them in 4 categories: feasibility, fit with Pete Carroll, fit with the modern NFL, and an overall score, which I must preface by saying not an aggregate. It is not an aggregate. It's how excited I would be if we got said candidate as an offensive coordinator. All right, let's jump in. We're going to start with the first name we got linked to when this thing started, Shane Steichen, a 35-year-old and one of many people we may pick up from the Los Angeles Chargers rebuild effort this offseason. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at every season of Shane Steichen's career as a coach since 2010. So basically the last 11 years, the last decade plus. And we're going to see what he did. We're going to try to put it into context, and we're going to try to see whether or not this is a candidate worth considering. So Shane Steichen, he's 35 years old, which is kind of cool because if he's good, then maybe he can be the next head coach. And then if he's a good head coach, boom, you've got a head coach for maybe the next decade plus. He could be your next long-term answer at head coach. It's possible. So that's a plus right then and there. All right, let's take a look at the old resume. 2010, he was an offensive assistant for the Louisville Cardinals. They went 7-6, so they were an average team. They had an average offense scoring over 26 points a game, which was 65th in the league. They passed the ball for about 100 or 194 pass yards a game, and they ran the ball for about 175 yards a game. So slight lean towards the run, but not a big one. I don't think there's necessarily anything you can glean from this. He was an offensive assistant for a pretty average run-of-the-mill offense that there's not a ton to say about it. All right. He then took a couple of years being a defensive assistant, which, hey, that's kind of interesting, right? He has a little bit of experience as a defensive assistant. And then he found work on the offensive side of the football in Cleveland for the Browns as an offensive quality control coach. And since it's the Browns, you might expect that the results here were not good, and you would be correct. The Browns this year went 4-12. They scored barely over 19 points a game, which was 27th in the league of 32 teams. Terrible. They were 11th in the league in pass yards, 253, which is, you know, a little above average, but when you're a bad team that's always playing from behind, this is not a thing to hang your hat on, really. And they were one of the worst running teams in the league with only 86 rushing yards per game, 27th in the league. So This is not something that Shane Steichen can be proud of. However, he would find work in San Diego the next year, and things would start to get a little bit better. He was the offensive quality control coach for the Chargers for 2 years, 14 and 15. First year, 9 and 7. The Chargers were an okay team. They scored almost 22 points a game, which was right near the middle of the league. Okay results. They were 10th in the league in pass yards per game with 256, and they were near the bottom of the league in rushing yards per game with 85, which was 30th. So, not great, but not terrible either. And then the next year, the bottom fell out for the Chargers. They went 4 and 12. Their points per game dropped to 20, which was 26th in the league, so bad offense. They passed the ball really well. They were 4th in the league in pass yards, 287, and they were almost last in the league in rushing yards, again with 85 rush yards per game. Now, the pass to run split here might be a little notable, but again, when you're a bad team, you're going to pass the ball a lot because you're trying to come back all the time, so I don't know how meaningful that particular split is. So let's go forward and take a look at his work that probably got him the attention that he currently has right now. His work as a quarterbacks coach for the Chargers in 2016, 17, 18, and part of 2019. So he was the QB coach for the Chargers when they had Phillip Rivers as their guy, and he played almost every snap these 3.5 years. So what happened to Phillip Rivers when Shane Steichen was the QB coach? First year, they went 5 and 11, not good, but they did have a top 10 offense. They scored close to 26 points a game, 9th in the league, really good. Their QB turned the ball over too much, and that's part of the reason why they had a bad season. Otherwise, it was not a bad year at all for Rivers. He threw for almost 4,400 yards, 33 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, completion percentage of 60.4, QB rating of 88, and he made the Pro Bowl. So it's an okay year. At this point, people were starting to wonder if the Rivers party was over, and with results like this, you can see why. All right. The next year, as the Chargers quarterback coach, he went 9 and 7, a little better. The offense was not, however. It dropped all the way to 22.2, which was 13th, still slightly above average. However, Rivers had a much better season. Threw for 4,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, only 10 picks, so he got way better here. Completion percentage close to 63, which is decent, a nice improvement over the 2016 season. QB rating of 96, and he made the Pro Bowl again, so he got a little better. 2018. This is the season that makes me a little excited about Shane Steichen. The Chargers went 12 and 4. They scored almost 27 points a game, which was 6th in the league, so they had a really good offense, and Rivers had a great season. He threw for 4,300 yards, 32 touchdowns, 12 picks. Completion percentage was off the chain, 68.3, one of the best seasons in NFL history by a QB. It's right up there with what Wilson did last year, and his QB rating was 105.5, and he made the Pro Bowl yet again. So, hey, this is a great season by Rivers, and I'm not suggesting that Shane Steichen made Phillip Rivers. Rivers had great seasons well before Shane Steichen was anywhere near the Chargers, but this is a nice job by him from turning Phillip Rivers into a guy who looked like he was starting to become washed up to a guy who was one of the best QBs in the league for 2 straight years, and this year straight up was downright impeccable. Phenomenal season from Rivers. This is probably the best thing Shane Steichen has done as a coach in the last 11 years. And then the next year, the Chargers started out 3 and 5. Their offense fell off a cliff to 19.2 points, which was 25th in the league. Over this period, Rivers did throw for a lot of yards, 2,300, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. His completion percentage fell, but was still a very respectable 66. And his QB rating was 92.5. So a bit of the shine comes off. And at this point, Ken Wisenhunt got fired, and Steichen got promoted to offensive coordinator for the last 8 games of the year. Over this 8-game stretch, the Chargers went 2 and 6. Their offense got significantly better. It went up to about 22.5 points per game, which was 15th, so slightly above average. They were 7th in the league in passing yards over this period, approximately with 272 yards per game. And their rushing yards per game was 112, which was near the middle of the league. So the offense improved, even if the team overall did not. I think there were like 1 or 2 blowouts in the mix that year that caused the stats to go up a little bit, but regardless, the offense improved when Steichen became the coordinator. And finally, last year, now working with a new quarterback in the form of Tyrod Taylor and then Herbert. Chargers went 7-9, so below average team. Their points per game went up a little bit to 24, even though their ranking went down to 18th. And they had a lot of success through the air, 271 passing yards, 6th in the league. And they were an average rushing team with 112 rushing yards per game, which was 18th. So there were obvious shortcomings with the Chargers offense last year. We all kind of know them, I think. They were inefficient. They were ineffective in the red zone, but they moved the ball well. Herbert had a phenomenal year. I'm sure he's going to win Rookie of the Year if he hasn't already. And there was a lot of potential there. A lot of the shortcomings of the offense last year for the Chargers are put on Anthony Lynn, but Steichen certainly owns a part of that as well. It's concerning, but this was not a bad season for the Chargers offense, especially when you consider the fact that they were starting a rookie at QB. So that's the resume. Now let's take a look at some of these scores. First is feasibility. I think the feasibility of us signing Shane Steichen is 9 out of 10, very high. The team is interviewing him. The team seems to want him. It would represent a lateral move, but it would be to a better team, or at least probably. Some people think the Chargers are going to be very good next year, but Shane Steichen has not done anything yet that warrants head coaching hype. So it seems very likely to me that he would consider coming to Seattle as a step in the right direction for his career. So I think the feasibility is a 9 out of 10. The fit with Pete Carroll, I said a 7 out of 10 because if you looked over his career so far as an offensive coach, he actually seems to be a little more pass happy than run happy. A lot of the teams that he's been a part of have not been good running teams. A lot of them have had very prolific passing attacks. A lot of them have had very good quarterbacks, especially given the fact that he worked with Phillip Rivers during the part of his career where he was rejuvenating himself. So I don't know if he fits great with Carroll, but the team has interest, so Carroll seems to feel like it can work. Fit with modern NFL, I said 8 out of 10 because he did great work in San Diego / Los Angeles with Rivers and Herbert. Like I said, it revived Rivers' career and drove Herbert, who I did not like coming out of college, to having a Rookie of the Year campaign. There are some efficiency issues. There are some years where you can find that the team amassed a lot of yards and was able to move the ball well, but they weren't able to finish drives with points, which, hey, that's something we really don't want to see in Seattle. We've seen that before, and it was one thing that we didn't see very much of under Schottenheimer, so we don't want to go back to that. But he's had success in the modern NFL. It was just 3 years ago in 2018 that he had one of the better offenses in the league and a very good playoff team in LA with the Chargers. So, yeah, I think he can work with the modern NFL. My overall score for how I would feel if we got Shane Steichen to be our offensive coordinator, I would say 7 out of 10, but it's a high 7 out of 10. He's had good results. His philosophy does not strike me as something that belongs in the 1980s. I will say this, he's never been involved in a top 5 offense. The best offense he was ever involved in was that 1 year in San Diego, or LA actually. Other than that, his offenses have been somewhere between above average and bad. But I see some stuff that I like. I just don't consider him to be some almighty offensive guru. And that's going to take us to the end of this video. Keep an eye out. Tomorrow we are going to go deeper and deeper into more potential offensive coordinator candidates. This first one we looked at was pretty good. I would be okay with getting him. I would have some reason to be excited. I'm not in love with it, but there is reason to believe that if Shane Steichen becomes the next offensive coordinator of the Seahawks, that would be a step in the right direction. See you guys later in streams. Peace out. Go Hawks.